Okay, this is a map off the internet of the South Pole. No, it says South Pole. This is a grid saying this is going north. This is true north. I don't understand what that means. I guess because it's at the bottom of the ball, the globe, and it's not like we would normally see on a flat piece of paper with the XY axis. But if you notice, what are these squares around here? It's a grid. It's a perfect little grid with perfect little squares. Do you know what it's based off of? Longitude and latitude. Do you know what longitude and latitude are based off of? X and Y axis. It's based off your X and Y axis. Okay? Today, we are going to be learning ways to find the distance between 2 points on an X and a Y axis, which could be used on a map to find the distance between 2 locations in this world. We are also going to use the XY axis to find the midpoint between 2 points. Okay? But I want you to see that this stuff is applied in real everyday life. This is just only one example. All right. Do this, that, there you go. Today is March 10th. We are starting section 8.1, midpoint and distance formulas. Alright, now watch this. If I take an X and a Y axis, alright, and I write 2 points here. Let's say the coordinates of this point, this is the origin of my XY axis, and this is, let's say, 8 on the X and 0 on the Y axis. If I asked you to find the midpoint of those two things, could you do it just by looking?
Yes.
Pretty easy, right? Because it's a straight line. The midpoint is halfway between the two. Now, if I ask you to find the distance between those 2 points, is it as easy? No. Okay? So we need some sort of way to be able to do this thing. Okay, let's think about a midpoint. What's another word for midpoint or middle? Thinking in ways that we can calculate things. Let me ask you this. If you make a 90 on test 1 and you make a 100 on test 2, your average is 95, which is smack dab in the middle of 90 and 100, right? Midpoint is the exact same thing as average. Well, how do you find the average of 2 tests?
Add them together and divide by 2.
You add them together and divide by 2. If the midpoint is the same thing as the average, how do you think you're going to find a midpoint? Add something together and divide by 2. Now, what we need to understand is that a midpoint is an actual point on a graph that has 2 coordinates. It has an x coordinate and a y coordinate. So if we're going to be finding a midpoint we need to find what is the middle of the two x coordinates in this, from this point to this point. What are the two x coordinates on the 2 points? Remember, and we should not be having issues on which one's x and which one's y. We should be way past that point right now. What are the two x coordinates of my two end points? 0 and 8. If you were going to find the average, what would you do? Add them up and divide by 2. What are the two y coordinates? 0, 0. You would add them up and divide by 2. And it gives you 4, 0. Which we already said is the middle. Okay? So what we have here is our formula for midpoint. You need to know this. You need to commit it to memory. You will see it again for a very long time, not just in high school, but in college. Midpoint is average. Remember, midpoint is an actual point with an x and a y coordinate. The x coordinate is found by adding the two x coordinates of your end points and dividing by 2, because you're finding the average between them. And the y coordinate is found by doing the same thing to the y coordinates of your end points. Now, you don't even have to have a picture. I can just tell you the points, and you can find the middle. All right, we are going to find, here we go, on page 412 in your book. Please take out your book and turn to page 412. A landscape design includes 2 square flower beds and a sprinkler halfway between them. Find the coordinates of the sprinkler if the origin is the lower left corner of the grid. All right, well, it gives us what we need, but I want us to think through this. Why would somebody use a grid like this if they were going to lay out a flower bed? Well, if you're making a flower bed of this size, how hard is it, do you think, to just eyeball it? Pretty difficult. Yes, it is. Okay? Now, if I have something that's this big, it's not very hard to eyeball it. Okay? But let's say we were going to make a flower bed in the big corner right there on the edge, and it like went halfway up the road and halfway here to the property line. That'd be pretty big. It would be hard to eyeball. We want to be specific, and especially if the school's paying us a bunch of money to do it, we better make sure we do it right. Correct? Okay. Now, if it's your own yard, you may eyeball it and be lopsided. There you go. All right. Now, we have 2 flower beds. Here's our little flower beds. They're cute. And it says the sprinkler needs to be in the middle of the 2 flower beds. Well, is there one specific point on this flower bed that I can use to find the middle or the exact middle of the 2? What? The farthest point out?
The middle of it?
The middle would be better. But the farthest point out would be good too. What couldn't be done is use this point and this point. Right. That would work too. Okay? We're going to follow with the book and they use the middle. But I want you to see something. Why wouldn't we use these 2 points? If I found the center of these 2 points, what would occur when I turn my sprinkler on? You'd be watering stuff that doesn't need to be watered way over here because the water would be going too far. And over here, you may not be reaching all the flowers. Okay? So the best bet is to go from the center of the 2 and find the mid